Is it this?
Creation of vastly constrictive intellectual property rights that means that individuals don't, in the poor, have proper access to things like medical.
Or is it this?
And it's pretty clear. It's absolutely
She doesn't like Putin because Putin has outsmarted her.
But anyways, I'm going to skip this part about Joe Biden because it's simply too chaotic. But I'm just going to be making it clear here. These aspects are the tip of the iceberg of the debate. And generally, when I introduce myself as a debater to my friends, there are two reactions that occur. Firstly, I'm a person that's really hard to get along with, because when we're engaged in commonplace arguments, I'm always the person that will win the argument at the end of the day. As forensics team debate captain, the people in my club probably know this. But the second thing I want to point out is that I'm a really good person to get a nice extracurricular with, because if you join debate, you'll generally get a really nice extracurricular. However, the integral way to win a debate is through a combination of wisdom and wit. As a matter of fact, far too many bad debaters in the status quo are mischaracterizing debate as a tool of sophistry, as a tool where individuals are able to lobby themselves. However, there are far too many different aspects of debate which are beneficial in society. It could be a handy tool for politicians to lobby for support during an electoral campaign. It could be a justification for many politicians to justify gerrymandering when it comes to political situations. Or it could be for a certain politician to pass an extremely integral bill in order to benefit thousands of unemployed and impoverished individuals within society. These are all benefits of debate that we don't see under the tip of this iceberg. But then, to change the status quo, I want to introduce you to several different types of debaters that we see in society. They often emerge victorious because they can exploit loopholes, leverage logical fallacies, exploit slippery slopes, but however, we have to deal with them with a combination of wisdom and wit. As World University Debating Championship winner Bo Seo has said, we have the ability to disagree well, but we also have the ability to disagree badly against dirty debaters. Now, I want to introduce you to 4 different types of debaters that are dirty that we see in common day life. The first is obviously the dodger, the second the twister, the third the wrangler, and finally the liar. Right, these are pretty interesting photos. Starting off firstly with the dodger. So, if my argument here is that non-recyclable plastic is extremely detrimental to the environment, their response would be, oh, then why are you using plastic cups on school every day? The idea here is that the dodger is shifting the argument towards me. However, this is simply a hypothetical debate, right? Because it is a debate where my opinions are expressed in a situation that is irrelevant to myself. However, when the dodger puts you on the spot to put you as part of the debate, it is extremely immoral because it is irrelevant to the topic in of itself. What they're doing is indirectly addressing your argument through shifting the focus. But how does this exactly connect to our theme of TEDx today of chain reaction? Right? The idea is that if you're defending a premise in which you have never talked about in the first place, this simply snowballs down to a giant slippery slope in which you are defending a situation that you have never mentioned in the first place. They're rediverting the attention. So the resolution here is very important. It's to re-establish your original argument. Or the chain reaction here will occur where you have to defend a situation where you never argued as you concede into their trap to a personal and irrelevant level. But the second type of individual then is the twister. These are the other types of bad debaters that we see in society. So let's say, I'll give an example here. Let's say the argument is that artificial intelligence is inherently bad because it takes up a lot of jobs in society. The response here could be, oh, are you saying that all jobs are going to be taken up in society and replaced by AI? Notice the fact that the twister is attempting to recharacterize the debate of the scope. The scope is now that all jobs would be replaced. However, the argument that I initially made is that some jobs will be replaced by artificial intelligence. What they're doing is falsely mischaracterizing and strawmanning my argument. So how do we resolve and deal with individuals like the twister? It is very important to re-clarify your argument because I argued initially that the scope of the debate is only towards certain individuals, such as teachers or professors that work in prestigious institutions, that could be replaced by artificial intelligence. But they made the false characterization that all jobs will be replaced, in which I am unable to defend myself against such a huge scope and wide variety of arguments that can come from side opposition. No matter if this ranges from a simple opponent that you're fighting against, or it's in a formal debate, I feel like these situations are all easily going to be implemented if you utilize the following tactics. But the third type of debater that we commonly see is the wrangler. So, as a matter of fact, nothing is ever good enough for wrangler, right? What they do is that they continuously challenge you. Nothing is ever good enough for them because they critique your argument but fail to offer any alternatives of their own. This looks like they're continuously going on the offensive while you're forced to be positioned in a defensive scenario. So what they're doing is they're providing skepticism. They never justify why their own argument is actually going to triumph the debate. They just continuously say that, oh, your argument has X, Y, and Z loopholes. That is not how debate works. What you're supposed to do is question them and place them on the situation. You're supposed to go on the offensive and ask them, what can you do to change the situation here? Put them on the spot and ask them for alternatives. And in this situation, they're unable to defend themselves because all they're doing is going on the offense. However, I want to make it clear that if you're trying to explain yourself out of a false premise that your opponent is establishing in the first place, this just makes your ethos, pathos, and logos seem less credible over time, which is not something we want to do because this will just snowball and chain reaction down into a situation where you're unable to defend your original argument because they've already successfully and falsely mischaracterized it. But the final type of individual that I want to introduce to you is the liar. This is relatively commonplace because essentially what they do is just by presenting lies into their argument. And the way to deal with liars is to plug and chug, I would like to call it. So if you place a truth into the false statement they've provided, the statement itself, I believe, will fall in of itself. So the example here is that, oh, we say that the earth is flat, right? We can start to question them. Do you write boats? Or do you write airplanes? If you looked out the window of Miss Sammy's classroom, you would see, oh, a lot of boats that are passing by. But in the distance, they start to appear generally. This is due to the fact of the curvature of the Earth. If you plug the truth into your original argument, we're able to expose the different loopholes that are established in their original argument and juxtaposing their claim. So finally, no matter if don't try to justify yourself in something that you never said in the first place, because this will simply chain reaction into a scenario where you're unable to defend your original argument. Try to pressure your opponents in a situation in which they are presented on the spot. When faced with bad debaters, I believe that tools such as debate is extremely integral and are needed to steer yourself back on track. No matter if it's facing a debater or a dirty individual that you're simply fighting with in a commonplace fight. I believe that it is important to redirect a dodger, clarify a twister, challenge a wrangler, and exposing a liar. And although this sounds kind of commonplace and cliche, always stand yourself and utilize debate as a tool to win your argument at the end of the day. Thank you.